Welcome, everyone. I'm Angelo Robles, host of the Angelo Robles podcast. I'm also the founder and CEO at Family Office Association. Today, our title is Rapper and Producer Discusses NFTs, Changing Music Forever. We have two special guests with us today. The rapper and musician would be Shawn Mims, co-founder of RecordGram, musical artist, as I noted. And I may remind everyone, 2007 #1 song on the US Billboard Hot 100. And we're also joined by Erik Mendelson, who's the other co-founder of RecordGram. Shawn and Erik, welcome to the show.
Angelo, thank you for having us.
Really, really excited. One, being a big music fan and seeing how something is just going from like 0 to 100 in like a tenth of a second. I mean, I remember talking in one of my programs, December of 2020, just about 5 months ago. So it's very early May now, talking about, keep an eye on these NFTs. They're going to be a really big thing and how it's interacting with the metaverse and just so much going on the blockchain. And I had people that were like, yeah, we kind of hear what's going on with NBA Top Shots and in what Jonathan Bales did and buying that and having exponential growth on some digital art. But really, in my opinion, how it's altering the landscape of music like immediately right now and forever. And in many ways, putting the power back in the hands of the musician, the artist, the creator. So it's really, really exciting. Erik, why don't we start with you? Let's give our audience some foundational. What are the ABCs of NFTs for musicians?
So before I answer that, when were you getting into NFTs? When you were talking about Top Shots, when was that brought to your attention?
I probably became familiar with it, I would say late fall of this past year, and then really started to dive more deeply into it and noted it on a specific podcast in early December. So about 5 months ago.
Okay, cool. I'm just trying to get a reference point because, Shawn Mims and I, as well as our other co-founder, when we created RecordGram, which we created about 4 years ago, it was essentially an NFT creation platform before people even knew what NFTs were. So Let me break it down for your audience what an NFT is, because I know that it's all over the news and some of them may be scratching their head. NFT stands for non-fungible token. In layman's terms, it's literally a rare digital collectible on the blockchain. The reason that being on the blockchain is important is because it actually tracks the ownership of that rare digital item. So people are like, well, Erik, what's so rare about digital items? We can make millions of them. Yes, you can also go to the, take pictures of the Mona Lisa and put that on your Instagram on your phone, but it has absolutely no value because you don't own it. In the NFT space, the ownership of this rare digital item is tracked on the blockchain. So ownership rights are tracked and therefore can be transferred. So that's essentially what an NFT is in literally the simplest form. If you think of a baseball card or any physical product that has value because it's rare and collectible, you can literally create a digital version of that and turn that into an NFT. And that's kind of what's happening right now in the music space. So in the music space, where what's really cool about the NFT space as it relates to musicians is that this is, in Mims, in my opinion, the iteration of the fan club, the super fan club, where you can literally create rare digital art. Typically in music, it's art, like a graphic art mixed with music to create an MPEG file, like a movie file. So you can create this rare digital piece of art and sell it to 500 or 1,000 of your biggest fans for a pretty high price point. And for artists, it's essentially brand extension. It's an additional revenue stream for the artist. It's an additional creative outlet. We've lost that essence. We were talking before we started the talk here about Biggie and Nas and Run DMC or Metallica or any musician, where we lost that element of opening up the vinyl or then the cassette and then the CD and seeing the artwork. There's no appreciation for the artwork anymore. There's no real appreciation for the art because we live in a digital world where things are moving instantaneously. And what this whole NFT space is bringing, I think it's bringing back that essence of, man, I'm one of 1,000 people to have this Mims piece of vinyl, this Mims NFT, this XYZ NFT. And I think that that's where this is going, in addition to the metaverse and other things, which I'm sure we'll get into.
Yeah, no, that's really exciting. And maybe I'm a little off on my timeline, but I guess it came to fruition with the general public that like the Kings of Leon, and what they're doing in terms of their drop of an NFT, and then those that are going to get a vinyl version because there's like a charm to see, feel, and touching. So it really is kind of combining both, which is why, again, although correct, NFTs in theory relative to the blockchain have been around for a couple of years, but really it was like this and then it went like that. And that really is what the last couple of months. So it must be a really exciting time for you and for musicians. I mean, this is really an opportunity for them to be able, I hate to use the word to monetize, but there's nothing wrong with that. Their fan base who gets great enjoyment from them. Not everyone is going to be a top 20 or 30 artist making necessarily millions and millions and millions. How could someone who's an artist and really any type of art make a sustainable living in today's world and have a global audience? And that's where, having 100 true fans, we'll probably get into a little bit of that, how an artist could potentially still be $100,000 and up in terms of their income, where even a year ago or a couple of years ago, that would seem completely impossible. So Mims, from your perspective as an artist, I mean, this would be a really exciting time now for young artists and creatives to come up. There's never been a time like this.
Absolutely. I want to take you back to 2000 and I believe 5 or 6, when the music industry probably changed. A big pivotal moment in music was when iTunes was introduced. And the reason why I even bring that up is because Steve Jobs did 2 things that day. He single-handedly destroyed the music business, and then he also single-handedly helped out independent artists and being able to have a platform to distribute on. So it was a gift and a curse. Why I say destroy the music industry is because he at that moment set the price point for music for the rest, obviously, until now, obviously until NFTs are really popular. Again, I'll take you back even maybe 3 years ago when Wu-Tang introduced a one-of-one album, and Martin Shkreli, I messed his last name up, purchased it for millions of dollars. I believe that music has been diluted. The cost of music has been diluted by technology, and I think that the experience that fans have received in the past years have been, because of the dilution, they're not necessarily focused in or honed in on music being considered an art anymore. For them, it's enjoyment and it's entertainment. But for me as an artist, obviously, I always have to remember that it is art. And I think with NFTs now, not to say that we won't release music to the general public, but I think you really get to define the difference between commercializing your music or actually doing things for your fan base and audience that allows them the ability to kind of be a part of your journey. And like Erik said, you can take a picture of the Mona Lisa, but the ownership of the Mona Lisa is what people chase.
Yeah, that actually is a good analogy, because some people that, again, this is coming at them so quick, they don't quite grasp it. Yeah, I mean, you could go and take a picture of the Mona Lisa, you could have it on your phone, you could look at it, but it's you don't own the Mona Lisa. Where with NFTs in that digital world, and we'll get a little bit into the metaverse relative to proof of ownership in a blockchain, I mean, this is legit. This is how it is. You have to realize, going from analog to digital, things don't really go back to analog. Now, in something like art and what we described on like the old album and vinyl covers, there is a bit of a charm actually to bringing that back, like what Kings of Leon and others are going to do. And Erik spoke a little bit about that. But to think that the digital is going to go away and it's only going to be analog, I mean, you're wrong. And the opportunity for exponential growth and volatility, but opportunity for investors where the asymmetrical returns are off the charts, it's right now. And may be that way, I don't know, weeks, months, a couple of years, but it's not going to be that way forever. But to think it's going to go back, you're crazy. It's progress and technology moving forward. Erik, a question for you. NFTs offer digital artists an opportunity no other platform has ever given them, and the opportunity to effectively sell directly to a global target market. If this was a decade ago, and you said you were doing it 4 years ago, but I guess people weren't ready yet. I mean, how would things be different now? I suppose that's asking you, looking in the past and also taking a look at the future.
Yeah, well, I can kind of answer that question. So it wouldn't have been well received 10 years ago because blockchain was a foreign language to most 10 years ago. And it really was blockchain, Bitcoin was inception was, I think, around 10 years ago or something like that. So the adoption for cryptocurrencies probably started to happen around 2007, which is when Mims and I created our application. It's really coming, I think, full circle now. And NFTs are certainly coming full circle now. But we didn't, there's an elephant in the room, and that's the NFT talk and this NFT explosion, in my opinion, and in a lot of experts' opinion, really happened and accelerated because of COVID. Because as it stands right now, even whether it's a music NFT or a traditional art NFT, the buyers that are buying these NFTs are crypto savvy people. That is people who understand crypto, probably own crypto, have a digital wallet, understand about security, understand about custody, know how to transact on exchanges, all that type of stuff. The 99.9% of music fans out there who are hearing NFTs right now still don't participate in the ecosystem because, one, most marketplaces don't have a fiat gateway, meaning they can't use PayPal or a credit card, meaning they have to be crypto savvy. So even if I, as a music fan, not me personally, but a music fan wants to buy, let's say, a Mims NFT, it's extremely, extremely difficult for them because there's a lot of pain points in the process of them understanding crypto. I mean, it took Mims and I months to learn how to use crypto when we first got into it years ago. So imagine explaining that to a music fan right now who wants to go spend $500 on an NFT, and now you got to teach them about blockchain, Ethereum, and all that. So 10 years ago, it would not have been as well received as it is now. And again, COVID has actually accelerated this NFT explosion because the only people that are really buying NFTs right now are people who are buying it because they feel like there's probably a demand on the resale market where they can then buy it at a certain price and then resell it potentially for a higher price later on, which is actually really short-sighted. Because where all this is going, when you want me to think futuristically, is that music fans, there will be more marketplaces that are introducing fiat gateways in the very near future, like damn near next week, right? There are going to be a lot more marketplaces, a lot more competition right now in the market for fiat on-ramping. And once you have the crypto people interested in it and the music fans interested in it, that's when you hit the tipping point. Because now you're going to have passionate music fans trying to buy these rare digital NFTs, and then you're going to have these crypto and savvy investors that are trying to get their hands on it because they want to then go ahead and resell it to those music fans. That's when there's going to be a really interesting explosion happening. But again, this is kind of the gateway drug to what you've already touched on a little bit, which is the metaverse. And then even further down the line, I think it's important that your audience knows that when I say they have ownership of the NFT, they're not getting downstream rights, meaning they don't own the copyright. They can't make money off of the music. They simply own the Mona Lisa, for example, but they can't put the Mona Lisa on their t-shirt and then sell those t-shirts as if it was their IP or their intellectual property. So I want to be clear on that. I don't want to get too in the weeds, but NFTs are essentially going to be your digital ticket to the virtual, when you say metaverse, you mean the virtual world. That NFT is going to be the ticket into the virtual world in the same way, and this is as easy as I can explain it. My son, who's 10 years old, plays Fortnite and Roblox, and he's spending hundreds of dollars a week on these digital goods, which have no value. It doesn't even make him play better in the game, which I just found out. It just makes him look cool. Daddy, it's like wearing a new pair of sneakers to school. Daddy, look at these skins I got. Look at this house I built. I'm like, well, does it make you better in the game? He's like, no, but it makes me cool. So NFT is kind of like, hey, I got this cool NFT. Like, I'm only 1,000 people that have it. Come look at my NFT museum, my virtual museum. I can use my NFT to go to a virtual Mims show in the future, a virtual M&M show in the future. That's where this is all heading when you talk about the metaverse. And then further down the line, I believe that owning these NFTs will eventually give, and that there's a lot of security regulations that have to take place and lawyers are going to have to get paid. But I believe that in the future, an artist like Mims, who's currently independent and not signed to a label, can sell a piece of his intellectual property via the NFTs. How easy is it? Would it be for Mims to say, "Hey, Angelo, you want to own 10% of my of the future earnings of this record? Buy 10% of my NFT for $50,000." So now you, Angelo, we don't even know that your name is Angelo. We just know that you have a wallet. You just purchased 10% of Mims's intellectual property. And in the future, anytime that song generates money, you, as the holder of the 10% of that NFT, gets transferred, that gets your 10% of the action. And by the way, if you took that and resold that to the next person, now you lose access to that 10% and the next person gets 10%. This is where all this is going in 3 years, but we're just now about to hit tipping point once the music fans are able to buy NFTs. And I'm so excited about it. That's why the space is so investable, in my opinion.
Yeah, actually, that ban royalty security or collectible is going to come up in one of my questions. So we're definitely going to dive into that. I mean, people could hear your passion that was really well articulated and hopefully very valuable for our audience. I have a 17-year-old. So these Generation Z, and it's a huge generation, they're digitally native. They're distrustful of corporations and the tradition, and they like the decentralized nature of the things we're talking about, which is why they're latching on to crypto, understanding the blockchain, and really their phone is their universe. They're not going to need to adapt to quote unquote how we are. We're going to adapt to them, or there'll be some level of compromise. But again, to think that this is going to fade away, you're just, I mean, I don't know what planet you're living on. That never happens. This is how things are moving forward, and you're going to have to adapt to it to really forget even profit, but to enjoy and be active in how things are headed. This is going to be really, really important for you to understand, no matter your financial position. Mims, let's talk a little bit. We hinted at it earlier. Kind of, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity for NFTs for an aspiring artist. So I learned 25 years ago through Kevin Kelly at Wired magazine back then, like you only need 1,000 true fans to have an audience and to make a living. In today's world, I mean, yeah, I guess the more the better. I'd like 10,000, 1,000,000. But in theory, 100 true fans that are willing to pay $1,000 a year. And we're seeing that now with creatives on maximizing YouTube and social media, upcharging people to a Patreon, especially if they're a writer or providing unique content. And we're seeing this now go into NFTs. An artist can absolutely make a living if they have 100 really dedicated fans.
Yeah, I mean, I guess not much to say after that. You're absolutely right, 100% correct. I do a lot of mentoring to other artists, and I actually start my number even a little lower. I say that if you can find 10 diehard fans or people willing to work with you, then you know that you have what it takes to be a part of the music industry. I believe, and me and Erik debate this all the time. I mean, we obviously deal anywhere from a corporate level of corporate companies all the way down to artists, like I mentioned. And I believe the people who have the most power and influence are the micro influencers. That, to me, not necessarily the people with the millions of followers. If you look at the NFT space now, and you notice that certain popular artists are struggling to actually sell off their NFTs, while others are flourishing because they're really building within the community, like Erik talked about. We're not talking about diehard fans. We're talking about most people who are whales, or anyone holding on to some big crypto within their wallet. So yes, 1,000 to me is more than enough. If you even less than that, honestly, if you can sustain, if you have 100 true passionate followers and you can drop one record a week to where they're purchasing it, that is a great amount of money that you can generate, or a great amount of wealth you can generate as an artist.
And that's all what's being packaged with this NFT stuff right now. So the NFT is the iteration of Patreon. It's the iteration of, Mims mentioned the Wu-Tang album that sold for $1 million to one person. The campaigns that I'm doing right now with artists is, let's sell 1,000 NFTs for $1,000. You'll make $1 million. It'll be distributed to 1,000 people, which is obviously still a very, very small amount, but it won't be just one person consuming that music. And the three campaigns that I've already executed with major label or superstar artists have been very successful under my direction. And every campaign that I do caters to that individual artist. It's not a one for all type of campaign. But yeah, it's micro payments on a macro level, Angelo. It's like we can get a certain amount of people to pay a certain amount of money because they're passionate in what we do, and they believe in what we're doing as a brand or as an artist. And we can package that up in an NFT experience, which they can either hold, or, which I didn't mention, unlike with Fortnite and Roblox, where these kids are just buying these elements to look cool in the game. The real benefit of NFTs is, yes, you look cool, yes, you have rare digital items, but there's also a liquid market for it on these marketplaces. So now it's exponentially, you're creating bigger markets out of NFTs because of the liquidity that the marketplaces provide.
I mean, there's just so many things that pop to mind. There's never been a better time to be an artist, whether it be, literal how we think of art, photography, music. And it's always been the challenge that the only ones in the past that made money, I was going to say top 1%, it may have been closer to top 1/100th of 1%. And that has so radically changed. Now it's an opportunity to follow your passion, have some fluidity on how the new world order is working, and to make a living. I'm not saying you're going to be, making tens of millions of dollars, although I'm not going to say you won't, who knows? So, I mean, I had a influencer. So influencers are also should be able to monetize this. I had someone who's big in the world of fitness who makes over $1 million a year. And that mainly is through their following and leveraging it on platforms like Instagram, selling merch, etc., which you, by the way, have no control over. Those platforms could pull the plug on you for a variety of different reasons. But imagine now being able to drop NFTs, to have the real relationship with your fans. Now let's take that a step further, Erik, because you did bring it up a couple of times, the metaverse, and potentially how people could be creating their own avatars, controlling their brand and image. And you mentioned Fortnite and Robles, and I'm very familiar with both of them. And again, I got a 17-year-old, but talk a little bit about, let's peer into the future, if not right now, a year or two from now, and how this is all going to weave together in the metaverse.
Great, excellent. I'm really passionate about this question. I just want to touch on something also. Like I mentioned before, this is the iteration of the fan club. So once you have someone's wallet address, I think your audience should be familiar. Once you have someone's wallet address, you may not know their name or where they live or where they're from, but you can actually, it's called airdropping. I can actually continuously, as an artist, now send content virtually to that wallet address. So let's say I want to send them a merchandising certificate to my website. Hey, here's 20% off of just for you because you bought my NFT, you get a 20% discount. Hey, here's 60 seconds of my next new song. Tell me what you think about it before I release. So now you're really engaging with those NFT holders and you're giving them a real utility value behind why do they pay this amount of money for this NFT. It's because they get VIP perks and special perks that could all be packaged in. Furthermore, what can be packaged in is the utility of being able, and I've already done this, of being able to bring these NFTs into the metaverse, into the virtual world. So if you're familiar with what Travis Scott did and Major Lazer did with Fortnite, where they did these virtual concerts, all those platforms are already being created. Atari is in the process of creating a metaverse where instead of performing in Fortnite, you're performing in the Atari metaverse. Let's say Mims is doing a concert or Eminem is doing a concert, and the only way into that concert is if you have this NFT, and that's your ticket into that concert. Or there's going to be these virtual NFT museums, just like we have physical museums now. Hey, come take a look at the 30 NFTs that I've curated. Come to Mims Museum and come take a look at Mims's collection of NFTs. And if you want to access the Mims Museum of NFTs, you need a Mims NFT to get into the Mims Museum of NFTs. Right. And that's where all this is going, is that these NFTs are going to have some sort of value in this virtual world, which obviously with Fortnite and Roblox has already proven, I mean, generations of video games has already proven that that's a fantastic business model. And this is going to be the iteration of that, moving on to the blockchain, where now those items can be exchanged transparently through ownership transfer on the blockchain and value transfer on the blockchain.
Since my audience does like discussions of money, remind me again of the ownership group of Fortnite. They are
who the heck is it? They're multi-billionaires. Who own it? Let me take a look.
Is it Epic? Epic Games? I think it's Epic Games.
Epic, that's it.
Yeah,
it was on the tip of my tongue. It's a private company. The money that they're making for effectively giving a game away for free initially in beta, and then, like Erik, you said, relative to your son, buying what's known as skins, which don't really have value as we perceive it, but in their community of gamers, it's their version of us wearing a Rolex or something like that. It's pride in ownership. It's kind of cool. It's unique. It's part of the club. And that's how they think. The founders of that and under Epic Games, billions and billions of dollars. I don't know if they're formally on the Forbes yet. They definitely should be. There's lots of people that should be, but they're what's called, they're real G's who move in silence. You just don't really know who they are.
Exactly. I'll tell you this much.
They're there.
They're actually in the middle of a war with Apple. So if anyone can battle Apple financially, they're doing well, and they haven't backed down either. So yeah.
They're trying to save they're trying to save that 30% that Apple charges them for in-app purchase. They're like, if Apple charges us 30%, now we have to charge our community 30%. So they're saying Apple has a monopoly. So like Mim said, they're pretty powerful if they can go all the way with Apple. But here's a fun fact for the audience: some of the early G's or early pioneers of the crypto movement are actually very, very big video gamers. Because I forgot what, I'm not a video gamer, but one of the PC games, I forgot, World of Warcraft or whatever, they, again, I'm not too familiar, but these items, there was like black markets for them where they used to sell these digital goods on like eBay to other gamers to give them utility in the game. But the difference between that and now is that they were trading it on like eBay and other spots, but now we have like cryptocurrency exchanges. So now it's not just video gamers trading with each other in this crypto space, it's the global financial economy that's trading with each other, because it's a way more liquid market than video game pieces. But this is essentially the evolution of how video games were. When kids would trade video game pieces, you know, they would play video games to win virtual goods to then sell them to each other, either peer-to-peer or on eBay. I'm not 100% sure how that worked out. The iteration of that is essentially cryptocurrency, which is the future money for the internet.
Yeah, I mean, you know, well said, guys. I mean, this is just, it's an amazing, the metaverse is going to be multi-trillions of money. And this is a tremendous, tremendous opportunity. And we're living in a time when all of this is kind of all coming together in this window now. I don't know, the next year, 5 years, 10 years. This is a tremendous asymmetrical opportunity. Looking at it from an investor's perspective, of course, it's much deeper than that, from globalization to artists to all that, to decentralizing to the power to the people. But, you know, we'll save some of that for some other stuff. Are there many, if any, pitfalls to an artist, Mims, in creating and selling NFTs to their fans? I don't know if I could think of one.
Judging my career and my history, and we haven't really talked much about it, but I was signed to a major label 2007. We grossed, Erik obviously and I executive produced the album. The album probably grossed over $16 million. I think our first royalty check, if I'm not mistaken, was like 30 grand. I think I decided never to do music again because of that, to be honest with you. I know Erik hates to hear that, up until the fact of NFTs being introduced, and now I'm actually working on a project. And the reason why for me is that once again, it takes the pressure off to having to worry about millions of an audience and, you know, traveling the world, which is great, but it is time consuming. And you can literally just focus on, you know, a handful of fans that you can cater to. So are there any pitfalls? No, I think the only thing I would say is if artists are coming into the world expecting that everything that they drop be, if it's just a cash grab, then I think that we're going to start to see that come down a little bit as time goes. We've had some amazing drops in the NFT space, and I know Erik has been a part of a few of them. But I think that once things start to kind of normalize, this will be, to me, it would be a toss-up between whether you sign to a major label or independent label, or you decide to kind of focus and do NFT drops. And which is why obviously Erik and I, you know, our position now is we have an app that we're repurposing that originally was for content creation, but now we're creating, we're adding on a feature to where we can create the NFT and mint it, because we believe that, you know, yes, the major artists are starting to kind of come into the world, but I believe that the NFT market, to me in specific, are for aspiring artists and also for independently driven artists right now.
What I determined when I was doing these three other big like NFT drops was that I was having so many like upcoming or independent artists that were calling me saying, Erik, help me do an NFT drop, or where can I do an NFT drop? And the strategy and development companies, the NFT strategy and development companies are quite honestly really focused on those major artists right now to make the most money and get the most attention, and the space is so new and everyone is trying to capitalize, that the independent artists or the artists that aren't as popular aren't really getting the attention in the space. So Mims and I decided to basically pivot the app that we created to allow these artists to create the content. And then there's a tremendous amount of pain points in actually transacting on the blockchain, creating wallets, buying Ethereum, minting the token, which is basically distributing or publishing the NFT, So we're going to handle all that for the artists, and all the artists have to do is essentially come on our platform to create the content, which is essentially audio and still image or video file. So once they send us those assets, we will then go through the process of putting it on the blockchain for them so that they don't have to learn all the stuff that Mims and I learned over the last 4 years. I do want to touch on one thing though. You did mention like what's kind of the downside. There's a couple right now that I see. It's not really a downside, but there's still that adopt, which actually just kind of leads into what I just said. It's the adoption of the music fans aren't really able to participate right now because they don't even know how to. But that's not a bad thing for the artist. That will eventually, that's going, I think in a few months, we're going to be at a pretty good point where music fans understand how to buy NFTs, hopefully 3 to 6 months from now. But the only thing that I see based on the campaigns that I've done, I recently did a campaign with an artist named Currency, very popular hip hop artist. He's been around, independent artist. He's been around for 20 plus years. He has his own merchandising site. He's an entrepreneur. Every time he drops merchandise, his site sells out. He's a multi-millionaire off of independent music. He's never had to really sign to a major label, and he's very well respected. His fans bought the majority of his NFTs, whereas other drops that I've done, it's primarily the crypto community that bought his NFTs. And there were certainly some fans, a lot of fans actually, that were upset that he was charging $500 for this rare digital collectible because they're so passionate for this guy that they let me digress. The guy to date, pretty much, he's released music for free his entire career, right? He's monetized it by collecting emails, building a fan base, and upselling them on merchandise, physical merchandise, tickets, touring, brand endorsement deals, etc. He's never really monetized his music. So for the first time, he comes out, he goes, I'm going to monetize my music through an NFT. I'm going to do 1,000 NFTs, something like that, and I'm going to sell them for $500. When I tell you some of his fans were outraged at that, how can you charge us for this? You've been giving it us for 20 years. And he's like, listen, I'm just trying something new for 1,000 people at $500. And his fans were like, they were so passionate. They liked him so much. They were so mad that he was charging them money for his music.
God forbid.
That's what God forbid. That's where we are. So again, if it's supply, NFTs are supply and demand, right? If it's rare, there has to be a limited supply. To make it valuable, it has to be limited, or it has to be a resource that you need to live your life off of to be valuable. So there's always going to be a certain amount of people that can't buy it, either because it was already sold out, or quite frankly, they just can't afford to. And quite frankly, that's okay. But that's the only downside, is that there may be some of your most passionate fans that you'll alienate, but then give them some free music later on, they'll be fine, right? It's not the end of the world. You can't make everybody happy. So as long as we go into it knowing that, we'll be okay.
I mean, looking at the way things used to be and how they are now, and some of it is, well, you have to do one first before the other. If a musical artist starts usually very locally, maybe they get attention, but they are, for lack of a better word, playing gigs. They're kind of touring, even if it's local and more regional, which is incredibly time consuming. To scale that up with a record, using the word record label being involved, that also costs a commitment from the label, lots of money and touring. And that obviously COVID-19 put an incredible crimp in that. So it is possible now, although touring gets you more exposure, you could sell merch. I'm sure it's going to come back and people want the face-to-face interaction, but you could start off smaller and not need to get to that level and still have it be successful in its own way and make a living without the expenditures of massive touring.
Agreed. Like I said before, this is a brand extension. This is an additional way to monetize. You mentioned Patreon earlier. Whatever you would offer your fans on Patreon, you can essentially do that in an NFT form and offer them with that, where that NFT, if they hold it and they have it in their digital phone, on their phone, and they come to my show and they show it to my security guard, they can participate in my meet and greet backstage at the show. Or
even better, for what I see people doing, and I know they're doing it more virtually now, is if you do purchase and participate in an NFT, and let's say I am putting on a concert, some artists would elect to either start a concert a little earlier for people who have purchased an NFT so that they can get more content at a show, or they can stay a little bit later to get the tail end to get more content at a show. So I think there's really some cool things when it comes to NFT, mixing it in not only with the digital world, but also with the real world, and real life things that happen. So
I want to point out something also. Mims is spot on. You mentioned something earlier, Angelo. I forgot kind of what it was, but it was kind of like the whole adoption curve. People thought Bitcoin was going to die in 2007 when it was like $1,000, right? Look where we are now. So if anyone thinks that this NFT space is going away, it's still very, very like COVID is like, it's still very early. No one knew what an NFT was probably 10 months ago, 11 months ago, right? So the virtual worlds are not disappearing. The hype around music right now, which by the way, there's a lot of fake headlines out there, which we can get into. Not fake headlines. There's a lot of sensationalism that's happening in the music space right now. That's Mims touched on it. That's giving a false sense of hope to a lot of artists. Every artist thinks they need to do $11 million like Blau did, or sell out, or it's a complete cash grab. And that's not really what the space is right now. Those early headlines were cool, and it got a lot of attention. It got a lot of the record label heads, and the musicians interested in the space. But the truth is, very few musicians are going to be able to make millions and millions of dollars from this. But they can really create a really cool iteration of the fan club and really monetize some of those things that maybe were a little difficult and challenging for them to monetize in the past. And again, COVID has exponentially.
You know what I want to say, and I think this is the importance of where we are now in the world, right? The reason why NFTs, in my opinion, will never go away is because when you take into account social media and you take into account how accessible most musicians are and most celebrities are, I guess, in this world, if you want to use that title, celebrities or entertainers have become so accessible that it's almost normal to be able to interact with them. And I believe that what this does is, and Erik used the word fan club, I'm going to equate NFTs to bringing back kind of like that traditional fan club feel, where you are a part of something that no one, if I walk into a club, I know that I got in there because whether I'm connected or I paid my way in, that a million people can't be in this space because I've actually used my hard-earned money to make sure that I'm in this space where I am now. And I like, even as my wheels turn, Erik knows I'm the idea guy. And what can be with the metaverse, for example, there's so many celebrities that I mean, they have an app now called Clubhouse that's doing really well in regard to kind of, during the whole pandemic. And what I realized is that people jumped on that bandwagon because now anyone can enter a room and see some of their favorite celebrities talking amongst each other and having conversations. So I believe NFTs just kind of bring back, in the music world at least, bring back the fan club aspect to it. And it'll probably take effect with movie entertainers and artists obviously is a big thing in it, but for music, it's definitely bringing back that traditional fan club feel.
For sure. And Erik, you hinted at it earlier. It could be a little bit, we don't want to get too deep into weeds. Arguably, it's a bit of a boring subject, but I think it's important to bring it up. Is band royalty a security or a collectible, and why that does matter?
Oh, well, if you're buying something because you're expecting to get profit from it or get compensated from it, then it's a security 100%. But beyond the metaverse, I believe that that's a very, very large market opportunity for someone to figure that out. I understand how it would work right now. The reason that it can't necessarily work right now is because the centralized, and I'm not sure if this is the question you asked, but the centralized platforms like Apple Music, Spotify, and YouTube, they're not on blockchain. So if you have this NFT/smart contract that dictates who gets the royalties transparently through the blockchain and who gets paid out, how do you pay out those parties if Spotify, Apple, and YouTube don't pay out on the blockchain? What you need is unfortunately, a centralized entity like a music publisher or an administrator of royalties to collect all of these royalties. So Mims says to this royalty company, this centralized company, I'm going to give you 100% ownership in my IP. I'm sorry. I'm going to give you 100% of I'm going to give you the rights to administer, not own. I'm going to give you the rights to administer 100% of my copyright, meaning all the money comes into this centralized entity. And then the entity has to pay out based on the blockchain smart contract who owns pieces of that NFT. That's the only way that it could happen right now until those other platforms until those other platforms go on the blockchain. So that's why I say it may not happen in 3 to 5 years out. Who knows? Quite frankly, I hope that this centralized company that I'm talking about, which doesn't exist right now, by the way, is actually a DAO, a decentralized.
Right.
That way it's more transparent and the rules of the DAO govern how it gets paid out. Because as soon as you start talking about centralized companies, now you're getting into the middlemen of the record companies and the labels and the publishers that have historically ripped off artists, like Mims mentioned earlier, how we got ripped off. So the last thing that, you don't want to be a 10% owner of an NFT, knowing that there's a middleman who's shaving off pieces for themselves, and you're not getting the full 10% that you should be getting. But again, yes, it is definitely a security, and I hope that this is where the space is going. In fact, I would bet a lot. I would bet my wealth that that's where the space is going to go in 3 to 5 years. It's already trying to be. So
there's no question that we're heading to DeFi, decentralized finance, and the middleman in a lot of different industries is going to be incredibly challenged. I could look at banking and some others. Yeah, the established will try to hang on to the status quo. Many of them will realize it's inevitable and they'll adapt. But I've spoken about that using the FANG stocks, Facebook, Apple, etc., Microsoft, and Tesla added to that as, will that look different? Kind of a top 7 in 3 or 10 years. Which one of those companies will no longer be a part of that and which will sustain? Take a look at who's adapting to the blockchain, what they're hiring, who they're hiring, and how they're adapting. And I've hinted at, there's one that I think has been very slow to adapt and one that surprisingly has been very nimble. The world is changing, like we said a million times. Erik, how are major record labels adapting to NFTs?
Oh, that's a great question. So when Mims and I were talking about what we were doing 3 or 4 years ago, and even up to like last year, it was like we were talking foreign language to them. Even when I mentioned NFTs to them, they didn't really fully grasp it or understand or have a clue. And quite frankly, I'm not going to lie, even up until COVID, I didn't really fully believe in NFTs and what it can do for the music space until I saw some of those case studies that I mentioned earlier that that motivated me to pivot our application with Mims and go down this direction, and also execute some major label NFT campaigns. The short answer is every label, of course, they're opportunistic. They want to, and they're capitalists. They want to capitalize on what's happening right now. But the labels, after having conversations with me, they think it has everything to do with the celebrity of the artist or the fans of the artist. But what they don't realize is that the graphic artist is just as important of a piece, if not more important of a piece, in the NFT creation, meaning the music is actually secondary, because a lot of these graphic artists that are doing well have these cult followings in the NFT blockchain space, the way that a Picasso would have a cult following, or Alec Monopoly has a cult following in the physical art space. There's graphic artists that have a cult following in the NFT crypto space. And it's a whole different business than the music business. And then you're talking about the financial aspect of crypto and blockchain, whole different business than the music business. So what Mims and I had to do is we had to essentially learn 3 or 4 different businesses in the last 4 years to become experts and thought leaders and executors in this space right now. The short answer is that you haven't seen major, and I'll get into Kings of Leon in a second, you haven't seen major label artists really execute in this space for various reasons. There's a lot of rights issues involved. That's number one. Mm-hmm. Number two, I shouldn't probably say this, but who the heck cares? To my knowledge, I haven't seen the language. Apple Music, Spotify, and YouTube, which are the centralized companies where the bulk of the revenues in the music industry are generated, in their contracts with the record labels, the distributors, and probably even some individual artists, again, I haven't seen the language, mandate that first looks and first listens of the music have to go through these platforms. Meaning, if an artist releases an album exclusively or first listen as an NFT format, before it goes on to Spotify, Apple, or YouTube, the labels could potentially be in breach of their entire contract with these platforms. The artist's content could potentially be threatened to be removed, so I've heard, from these platforms. And quite frankly, the catalogs of these labels, meaning not just the artist who did the NFT, but the entire roster, they can, when you're a centralized platform and you're powerful like Facebook or Apple or Google or YouTube, and you tell a record label, I'm going to pull your entire content from here if you do this NFT ever again, believe me, the record labels are like, okay, we won't, I'm so sorry, Google, we'll never do that again, right? So again, I'm not saying that has happened because it hasn't happened yet, but I believe that the labels are a little bit slow to it because of the threat that could potentially happen on their catalogs. But the labels are full in on what's happening now. Now, when I talk to, now they're actually calling me. Instead of me calling them, they're actually calling me for strategy, advice, and consulting services. Kings of Leon, by the way, Kings of Leon is a great example. I believe that they made like $2 million. At least that's what the press reads or the headlines read. So one would look at it as it's very successful. And certainly if you sell NFTs for $2 million, if that's really what they sold, that's very successful. However, what people don't realize is that they were trying to sell 50,000 NFTs for like $50 or something to their regular fans. Because again, the majority of people that probably bought Kings of Leon were crypto people because they knew how. Those 50,000 fans that they were trying to buy their album, I think less than 100 did, or less than 50 people did. So again, they were trying to sell 50,000, I think, for $50 each. They wound up selling less than 100. And here's why. When the fans went to go buy the album and the vinyl, and there was a lot that did, they didn't have a clue how to buy Ethereum. They didn't know what it was because you can only buy the album using crypto. So like I said earlier, like when we first started, I've seen this on different channels and different, like Billboard wrote about it. There was one fan who spent 4 hours just to learn how to buy Ethereum. And then when they finally said, when they finally sent it to their crypto wallet, it took them another hour to learn that. And then when they went to go buy the album for $50 of Ethereum, what happened? Well, they didn't realize that there was gas fees, which are transactions.
Yes.
So they went to spend, they took 4 hours. They were so happy. They went to go get the piece of vinyl, and then the transaction was failing. It took them 3 more hours to figure out the transaction was failing because they needed $70 more to transact.
Yes. Yeah.
With more money. So the short answer is that fan was so upset that he walked away. He was like, I'm never doing this again.
Now,
so the Kings of Leon, while they may have made 2 million, not sure if that's true or not, it actually, and I like the Kings of Leon, so no offense to anyone who's a Kings of Leon fan, it actually failed because the fans, they were expecting 50,000 to buy it, less than 100 actually went through the process because they didn't understand how to do that. When I saw that, again, that's called Mims and said, Creator app, which is, we got to pivot Creator app and we got to make it easy so that these fans never have that issue again, and so that these artists know how to do it the right way.
That is true, but here's what I will say about that. The way that someone my age started to get more fluid in a lot of this, it wasn't just reading and learning and watching YouTube videos and talking, giving relative what I do to the right people. All of that was really, really helpful. But I had to learn to think for myself, and I had to interact and actually do it. Learning how to use blockchain browsers like MetaMask, how to use certain things like Uniswap and SushiSwap, and how to buy things that are well off the grid for now of a Coinbase or something like that. And it was a little frustrating, but often the best way to learn is to actually immerse yourself and do it. So the person that got mad actually got a good lesson that could be very helpful for a lot of things moving forward. They may not think of it that way, but often the best way to learn much of this is to immerse yourself and do it. Will artists embrace social tokens in the way they're kind of embracing NFTs?
Mims, you want to take that one?
No, go ahead. You got it, Eric.
100% yes. 100%. Artists are looking, or artists are trying to figure this out now. Again, Mims and I are experts in the social token space. We kind of play in that space ourselves, and we built a company around it. So the answer is that yes, artists are definitely trying to figure out how they can create their own cryptocurrency for themselves. Unfortunately, a few celebrities like Floyd Mayweather and Khaled got in trouble by the SEC and fined $1 million because they were basically shilling or promoting basically a scam cryptocurrency in the past without disclosing their interest in the company. Quite frankly, I think had they disclosed their interest, had they said, hey, this is a paid endorsement by XYZ company, or hey, we're getting XYZ amount of crypto or dollars to tell you to buy this, they may have gone around the SEC laws. But when they were literally shilling the cryptocurrency, they got in trouble. So that made artists, lawyers, and their financial planners tell artists to get completely away from the crypto space. But now with social tokens coming in there, and social tokens are, I think the NFT is a little cooler than social tokens, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I guess I'll just add is that, first of all, when Eric and I jumped into space, we started in technology. So our means of being in the space was to create music technology. Then we were introduced into the crypto world. We've spent, and I want to say millions of dollars in legal advice, or hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal advice, and understanding how to build a token. Until the SEC, I guess, takes the grip off the neck of what is considered between what is considered utility and whatnot. I believe that artists there's no real artists out other than probably myself, to be honest with you. I don't even know, Erik, maybe you can name someone else, maybe Akon, who may have the knowledge that it takes to actually launch a social token off the ground and understand. I sat in the Clubhouse room that Erik invited me into, and I won't name everyone that was in there because I don't want to, but I mean, that top 1% of artists that you mentioned, and you know, and I mean the top 1% in the business were in this room, and they had no clue on even what, not only just what NFTs were, but what social tokens are. And it's a tough world. And even for me, I don't even, like I said, I pass it to Erik. I sometimes don't even like mentioning it because I don't know what influence I may have on someone, and I don't want anyone, you know, taking my advice.
I'll give you a funny story. I won't mention this artist's name. Actually, he's more, yeah, I guess he's a celebrity. A celebrity just created his own social token, and I'm actually personal friends with him. And he started promoting it on his Twitter and saying, "Hey, if you buy this token, I'm going to tweet about it tomorrow. It's going to go up in price." So I literally got on the phone with the celebrity. I called him directly. I said, "Listen, he was a young kid, but he's over 18, right? He can go to jail." I called him. I said, "Listen, I don't know who told you about the social tokens. I'm glad you're in the space." I said, "But you can never, ever go on your social media platforms and tell people that if they buy your token, because you're such a big celebrity, it's going to go up in price." He goes, "Oh man, my lawyers, my financial planner, no one ever told me this." I said, "Because they probably don't have a clue about."
They don't even know.
Yeah, they
They
don't
don't even know. We went through 3 law firms.
More than that, but he took me out to dinner. I'm taking you out to dinner because I saved him a loss. Get that down immediately, right? I was like, I'm like, I don't want to sound like the old guy in the room here because I'm not, and I'm not a lawyer. But what you're doing right now is insecurity. He's like, "What's the SEC? What's a securities violation?" You can talk about the utility, and this is what's good about social tokens, so your audience is aware, is that essentially celebrities, artists, or individuals can create their own economy and can set their own price for things. So XYZ celebrity can say, "You want to buy my merchandise? Instead of giving me $20, you're going to give me 20 XYZ social tokens of my own token because I'm accepting that as a means of payment," right? So that's a good place to be in, and there is utility there. But as soon as you start to say, "Hey, you're going to get a big return if you buy this," or lose money or make money, now you're in violation of securities laws. So it's important that as we get into the social token space, that artists and celebrities talk about the utility of their token, not the potential investment.
I want to add as well, you know, from my vantage point, I believe that we're, you know, and Erik and I, we did a whole road show for about 3 years. We went on the road. I've seen every form of cryptocurrency or protocol you can ever imagine. We know every protocol that exists. I believe the great thing about NFTs, in my opinion, at least of right now, when we talk about it, is mass adoption. Mass adoption is probably the biggest thing that the crypto community or blockchain community is in need of right now. And as NFTs rise, you start to notice that most of the traditional cryptos, like the Ethereums or you know, Bitcoins and whatnot, are actually starting to grow with it. And I believe that that's the real way we'll meet mass adoption. If every artist went out there and created their own social token, it'll be way too much confusion. And I believe that just going to recreate what happened in 2017 when things started to kind of bubble and burst more or less. So like Erik said, NFT space is a lot cooler than the social token space. I believe there's room for it, but that we're probably another 2 to 3 years out from that kind of people having to really focus on that.
Here's what I actually think is going to happen, Angelo. Actually, it's happening now. Artists who do NFTs are going to have their own social token also. So an incentive, "Hey, I'm Mims. Go buy my NFT for $500, and I'm going to airdrop you $50 in Mims coins, Mims tokens." So person buys the NFT, they get a little bit of a discount. This is all sales tactics, right? Kind of. And it's also adoption tactics. So you buy my NFT, and I'm going to reward you with my Mims tokens. And now with those Mims tokens, you can use that to buy future Mims NFTs, or use that token to trade and buy other artists or other celebrities NFTs, or buy digital merchandise or digital goods that are going to react in the metaverse. So I actually think that NFTs and social tokens are going to go hand in hand. By the way, in the very, very near future. But I think that NFTs are still going to be the Mr. Miyagi of the bunch, and Daniel's
changing directions a little bit, and I know, Mims, there's not really an easy answer or everyone would do it, but you did have a number one. What are the elements of a hit song?
Having me
well, obviously,
all you need is me on your team. And
yeah, we're gonna get to producers in a second.
No, I mean, but I will say this. Look, you know, anyone can create a record. I think it's I think when you really just understand the mechanics of the music industry, you know that you need a team, and that probably is after you left the studio with a record that you feel is really great, you need people to actually evangelize other people to listen to it. Our vantage point in the past with having that record is that Erik and my other business partner, that they worked at radio previous to becoming creating a record label with me, and we had an advantage at radio to where we built some great relationships. So I would say 100% it's the team. You can go in any studio and create. I tell people this all the time. I recorded that song on a Cardinal microphone. It was $100 microphone, an MBox, which is $200 or $295, which is like a sound card for your computer, and Pro Tools software. So all in total, probably about $600 in equipment. It took to actually produce and finish that record, as well as what the producer did to it, DJ Blackout, who produced the music behind it. And that record obviously generated millions of dollars. I've gone in my life to build. I have a professional studio in Long Island. I had one in Manhattan. I'm in talks now with Erik of putting one in Miami. And we spend millions of dollars, and I've still not been able to reproduce the amount of finances that have come out of that first record. So I say that to say that the music portion, that's passion, but the team is really, really, really what you need to kind of produce a hit record.
And it's actually harder now, Angelo, than it was in the past. In the past, everything was popularity is driven by radio play, but now radio play is actually like the bottom of the line. Now it's all about social media, but real social media statistics, not manufactured social media statistics, but it's getting cosigns from other artists who also embrace your music and share it out there. And there's a lot of there's new media platforms like Creator app, like TikTok and Triller and other platforms that are essentially discovering talent. So the music is moving differently than it was when we had This Is Why I'm Hot in 2007.
And a little bit out of left field, and perhaps a little more for you, Erik. What's your opinion? Is Max Martin the greatest pop producer of all time?
I got to go with Quincy Jones, man. I mean, anything that might, Mims, do you agree? Quincy Jones? I mean,
absolutely. I mean, he created honestly, in my opinion, the best album ever, which is Thriller. So I would say Quincy Jones as well, and many other things in that realm as well. So
yeah, I gotta go. I'm sorry, you can't take that away from Quincy just yet. There'll never be another Michael Jackson. So there's been some attempts, and there's been some good attempts, but I don't know. I can't see how that Michael Jackson cat. I don't know, man. That Thriller is never gonna die.
I mean, that doesn't take away from Max Martin, but I believe we wouldn't have, in my opinion, the Max Martins without the Quincy Joneses, in my opinion, honestly. So.
And Mims, let's go back a little bit, perhaps even to your childhood. I'm a couple of notches older, but a little bit about New York City, which is my backyard and where I've been for many, many years. In terms of influences to you and their impact on the industry, maybe going back from the late 80s in New York, Run DMC, LL Cool J, obviously Biggie Smalls, a little bit later, and sadly he passed away from, I guess it was Yonkers, that was DMX, and Nas, if I didn't mention Nas already. Like, how important were these people as role models to you, and then their talent? And then also, now that you know the industry, how probably some of them were taken advantage of, unfortunately, by people in the community. And I'm throwing a lot at you, but would love to hear you.
So I'll pinpoint on one name, and I'll say Nas. Let's start with him. Obviously, Nas has one of the greatest albums in hip hop, top 5 albums in hip hop. He wrote that album when he was 16 years old. If you listen to the Illmatic album. You would never know that he wrote the album. I think he was like 17 or 18 when he signed the deal, but the album was written when he was 16. So he was advanced and ahead of his time as a lyricist even then. You know, and I'm going to use me as an example. This is really why I think influence is important. I was influenced into music because when I was younger, people would say you look like Nas, and I didn't even really know what that meant. But it was enough for me to actually go and listen to his album in detail and say, "Dag, I want to be in the music industry, and I want to feel what that is." Then there were other artists like Jay-Z and, like you mentioned, DMX, that coming from that New York culture, it just convinces you that you had to brush up on your talent and make sure you were good. Now let's fast forward. When I look at people like Nas, he just dropped the record with Jay-Z on DJ Khaled's latest album. And in his song, he says, I'm the Coinbase, I guess, he invested in Coinbase, and, I guess he's now the Scarface of Coinbase, or crypto is what he calls himself. Yeah. So I mean, the beauty about that is you get to watch someone from its inception of creating one of the greatest albums of all time to becoming an investor in technology and having his own venture capital firm. It just shows you how far people from the culture have taken the culture and brought it to different areas. And there's so many people that we could speak of in that vein, like the Jay-Z's and the Diddy's. So when it comes to hip hop, and I mean, even New York hip hop in specific, I don't even measure it just of where it came from, but I'm also measuring it of where it is now and what people in the space who've been pioneers have been able to, what they've been able to generate. Now, I will say one more thing. I used to hate in the past where if you were 40 years old, and I am in my 40s, and you were rhyming and you were a rap artist, people would say, you're 40 years old and you're rapping, you should be thinking of doing something else. And hip hop has finally become a genre that is getting respect in its older age, to where now it can kind of match hand in hand with rock and roll, because we still see some of the greatest rock and roll artists touring and performing well into their 70s.
Yeah, into the 70s, yes.
yeah. So I think it's amazing right now. We're in a great space and good time.
Okay, let's jump into that maybe a little bit. So I grew up mainly, we're impressionable from what age? Probably 7 through 12. So for me, kind of the mid 70s, I was into what we now call classic rock, but I've always been adaptable. I like pop, I like country, I like hip hop and rap. I've gotten to like jazz. I actually, because I play guitar now, I'm into flamenco. And this has been really great for me. It's been a lot of fun. But going back to the genre that was dominant when I was growing up, let's broadly call it rock. Wow, like, is it dead? And what caused it to die? I mean, you have, what's his name now? Is it HBK? I'm going to mess up his acronym. Who's doing good and making a comeback. But could this happen to rap and hip hop? Might something else come along where the industry doesn't adapt enough? And who knows, the influences of the young people that are really going to be the ones driving a lot of this?
Well, I'll start to say this. 2 years ago, my girlfriend drove 3 hours to attend, I want to say, was it Metallica? I'm not sure. But she was born in 1988. I'm gonna give her age away, but she went and went to a Metallica concert in Albany. I'm gonna bet my dollar that she didn't probably grow up listening to the music during the time that she was obviously
right. She was too young.
Child. Yeah. So I'll say this: while the world is changing, and while hip hop has been in a different direction for a long time from where it came from, I'm noticing that a lot of the younger audience still can identify and adapt to music from the past. And then rest in peace, DMX, prime example. Most of the kids who are living today and musicians in the world of hip hop today weren't even born when his music was prominent. But they can recite every line that he's had word for word. If I look on my Spotify artist account, I'm generating about 600,000 plays or 200,000 plays a week or some odd thing like that, or a little under 600,000 a month. And I would have to imagine that's 15 years ago. That song was released 15 years ago. That probably 50% of that audience is under the age of 21, and they weren't even 6 years old when that song was good. So I think with technology, it's allowing music to live forever. That means music from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. It will be around until we are gone. Time capsule, and 1,000 years from now, people will be referencing songs from 1998.
I think there's just a lot less outlets now for the type of music that you grew up listening to. I mean, MTV was obviously a big
yes, more so in the 80s, but yes,
right. MTV was so traditional radio, all right, and then
right, that's all it was.
Radio, and then it went into MTV, which obviously accelerated it. And then when I grew up listening to Run DMC, Fat Boys, and LL Cool J. It's actually why I have a career today, because I was so inspired by that music. But around that same time, I was also listening to Def Leppard, Metallica, Bruce Springsteen, and other band or rock or alternative bands. I still do listen to all that, by the way. But back in the mid '80s, it wasn't really that accepted for white culture to listen to hip hop. You were actually an outcast. It may not seem like it was that long ago, but it actually was. And you were actually an outcast in school if you were listening to hip hop or rap music, and it was getting banned everywhere. And there was Congress meetings, and your family members would be like, "What the hell are you listening to this music for?" Because it wasn't accepted. Well, how much have times changed, right?
How much?
Yes. So to answer your question, I believe that rap could potentially be overthrown. There could be a new genre of music to come out there. I think that we'd be stupid to say that couldn't happen, because my family members who are all rock,
of course it could.
Of course, my family member who are all rock lunatics never thought they were like, rap is going to be gone in 5 years. This was in the 80s or even early 90s. It's never going to be around after 10 years. It's crap music. These are real rock, classic rock. They didn't see the forest through the trees, or whatever that saying is, the cloud through the tree. So, what happened? And not to say that rock music is gone, because it's not, but it's certainly not the dominant genre of music in this country anymore.
And I don't mean to bring it all into investing, but those that are a little older and made us the crypto and DeFi and blockchain, that's how some of you are thinking. You're entrapped in what you grew up with, what you learned in college. And yeah, some of that's applicable, of course, and valuable. You want to be diversified, but you're not adapting to the times. And volatility for sure, but the asymmetrical opportunities are like right now. This is early on in like rock and roll with Chuck Berry in the 50s, or rap starting ballpark, 79 or 80, depending on varying opinions and all that. This is early. I don't know if we're the first pitch, using a baseball analogy, but we're probably still the first or at worst second inning, and it's an opportunity to potentially be involved. Erik and Mims, it's been great to have you on. How could people learn more about RecordGram? And if I had to leave a very open-ended question, how could they profit? How could they be an investor in the NFT and Metaverse community?
Well, they can reach out to me at Erik, ERIK, at recordgram.com. It's all spelled phonetically correct. So RecordGram.com. That's Erik with the K. So Erik at recordgram.com is how they can reach me. In terms of investing into the space, there's so many different ways. Number one, you could start off by buying NFTs. Although I would caution you to do that. I think there's a false sense of reality that there's really this crazy demand on the aftermarket for these NFTs. So if you're buying NFTs just to flip them and make a profit, I would probably stop you in doing that. Not financial advice, but if you want to buy NFTs or just explore the technology because you're a fan of whatever NFT you're buying, by all means, that's one way. There are obviously companies that are focused on the NFT space that have native tokens. Matic, Polygon is one. Bondly is another one. So do your research as to what companies are making waves in the NFT space, and maybe buy those native cryptocurrencies. They can obviously buy Ethereum, which is kind of the backbone and the infrastructure for this entire technology to take place. I think that's obviously a sure bet. I own a lot of Ethereum, so I wouldn't steer anyone wrong there because I actually have investments in it. And then obviously you can make your bets in the equity play for some startups or some companies that are currently raising rounds. I know who some of them are. I'm not going to just sit here and name drop all these companies, but you can do research as an investment, as a family office, as an investment group, into what companies you think are going to make waves in the NFT space.
For sure.
Well, I'm going to be a little bit more direct. Erik and I are working on a project. We created RecordGram, and we branched off to create an app called Creator App, which allows anyone in the world to use their cell phone as a recording studio. We're now in the process of pivoting and integrating the NFT side to our app, and we're looking to scale. So we're actually, I don't want to say we're officially raising funds for what we're doing, but at some point in time in the very near future, before we launch, we're definitely trying to attack the market from a different angle. And ours is not necessarily just blockchain heavy, but it's definitely more on the content creation side. So you could still hit up Erik for that, or obviously hit me up, mims@recordgram.com. But I think where my mind is, we want to be the first platform to kind of create that mass adoption between the NFT space and the content creation space. So we are also in the market for trying to raise funds, and I'll let Erik officially figure that out later on, because he's the numbers guy.
Well, I was also going to say, if anyone in your audience wants to dip their toe in the space in any form or fashion, beyond the fact that we're obviously raising funds for what we're about to launch, or we actually just announced it with you guys today, kind of. We haven't even announced it to our users or our community yet. But if you just want an impartial opinion, one way or the other on the space, or whether they want to make an investment in the space, whether it's with us or another company, feel free to reach out to me. I'm an open book, because and I would give you my non-financial advice opinion as to what move I think is the best, or where I see the space is going. Because Mims and I, like you mentioned earlier, we know all of the technology, we know the CEOs of a lot of these companies, and Mims and I are futurists, and we see where the future is going 3 to 5 years from now, not what's going to happen tomorrow. And if you're interested in investing in the future and you want an impartial opinion, I'd certainly love to speak with you.
Well,
and shout out to JJ, by the way, for making this happen. I know
yes, sir.
He's in attendance, so thank you.
Mutual friend of all of us, JJ Sowers. Well, certainly Mims and Erik, this has been fantastic. Like the hour and 15 minutes kind of just flew by. I'm glad I did a more specific on NFTs, specifically from the musical perspective, but we covered a pretty lot of other ground, including the metaverse and other things as well. This has been great. I would remind everyone, I hope you enjoyed it, that you need to make your own decisions. If you're looking at anything from an investing perspective, don't invest more than you could afford to lose. Do your diligence and know that although there may be great asymmetrical opportunity, it's early, it's volatile, who knows? In theory, you could lose all your money. So you need to do your own diligence. We do these for educational purposes and to some degree, a level of entertainment to cause you to think creatively and really how to think for yourself and make your own decisions. Everyone, I'm Angelo Robles. I'm the host of the Angelo Robles podcast. I'm the founder and CEO at Family Office Association, a global collective of single-family offices. Check us out at familyofficeassociation.com. And for me, you could follow me on social media. If I had to pick 2 platforms, definitely follow us. I'm doing some unique content written that I do early for and before anything else on Instagram, actually, kind of a surprise, but that's Family Office Association. I know it's long, but go and subscribe, follow me, whatever, you'll find it. And probably my most active platform is my YouTube platform, where very simply we're Family Office. On that note, Mims and Erik, thank you all so much. I appreciate it. Look forward to next time.
Thank you, Angelo.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.